And we have a shocker in the recruiting world. 5-star defensive lineman Justin Scott has committed to the Ohio State Buckeyes. To break it all down, we bring in the man, the myth, the legend, National Director of Recruiting for us here at On 3, Chad Simmons. Chad, what went into this one? How did Ohio State come seemingly out of nowhere to grab Justin Scott?
Yeah, JD, this is a big one. Obviously, a grand slam for Ryan Day, Larry Johnson, that Buckeye staff in Columbus, Ohio. They were up against some big boys, Rival Michigan, Notre Dame right there, not far from home in Chicago. And, of course, Miami's had the buzz much of the spring, early summer as well. So Ohio State, they did a great job, got the final official visit. This one actually came down to, even though Miami had the buzz, it came down to Michigan versus Ohio State. That Big Ten rivalry head-to-head. Scott almost committed to Michigan on his official visit back early in June, but stayed true, finished out with Miami and Ohio State trips, came out of that visit to Columbus feeling like he wanted to be a Buckeye, and the Buckeyes beat out Miami, Notre Dame, and Michigan.
Chad, no secret, defensive line coach for Ohio State, Larry Johnson, is just a staple in terms of what he does on the recruiting trail. How big a factor was that for Justin Scott in picking the Buckeyes?
It was huge. I think that was the biggest factor for Justin Scott. I think on the mom's side, he has a great connection with his mother. I think Ryan Day factored in there and just kind of building that comfort with the mom and with the family. But going back to Justin and his decision, I think Johnson was the biggest factor. I mean, obviously, I think they relate off the field, and obviously his resume on the field was a major impact in this decision with Justin Scott going to Ohio State. Going back to Justin Scott's first trip to Columbus for the Rutgers game last fall, that was the first time he met Johnson face-to-face. And then this official visit, I think, really set it over the top with just the plan Johnson has for Justin Scott. Justin was breaking it down to me as they have goals for him every year. Come in as a freshman, academic all-conference, first team Big Ten freshman on the football field, All-American the next year, 2-year starter going into year 3. So I think the plan from the academic presentation to obviously player development, and I think another keynote in this too is how Johnson recruits. Justin Scott's kind of that quiet kid, doesn't like the phone being blown up every day. Larry Johnson's old school, man. He's not texting these kids 24/7, not 7 days a week, maybe 1 day a week, maybe one conversation every 2 weeks. And that played right into what Justin Scott likes as well from that attention standpoint. So I think all around, Larry Johnson played a huge role in Ohio State landing Justin Scott.
And Chad, was it always quietly Ohio State? I know Michigan was obviously in the mix. Notre Dame was in the mix. Miami was in the mix. How did the Buckeyes separate, and what was the timeline for them separating in your mind?
They were definitely in the mix. I think since that first visit I referenced a minute ago about Rutgers game I think it was early October last year, was his first time in Columbus. They definitely made an impression. He came out of that trip telling me last year that Ohio State then was his top school. But if you go through the timeline here, about this time a year ago, the buzz was around Notre Dame. He had a commitment date set early in 2023 for his birthday. That was going to be Notre Dame. Ohio State was still in the mix, as Michigan was, some other schools too. As we got into the spring, he did that spring break trip to Miami where he visited the University of Miami campus multiple days on spring break while in South Florida. From that moment on up until late June, the buzz was around the Hurricanes, but little did people know Michigan and Ohio State were right there as well, and he was always attracted to that Ohio State Midwest Big Ten football. And I think one key factor here as well that put Ohio State or helped them get the win in the end was location. Obviously, he's a Midwestern kid in Chicago, again, close with family. Miami's down south, way down south, far from home, far from family. I think mom liked him at like Notre Dame, Michigan, Ohio State, 3 relatively schools close to home in the Midwest. So that was all factors as well. This was not a slam dunk for Ohio State from the beginning, but they were a factor and they won out in the end.
The Buckeyes land Another highly sought after defensive lineman, Larry Johnson, doing what Larry Johnson does. And Chad, he's 6'5", 310 pounds, a pretty college-ready body, or so it would seem. Is he someone that we end up seeing early on the field for Ohio State? You mentioned it a little bit ago with his goals, but how early do you think we see him on the field?
You know, obviously he has the body, the frame, the size to do that. And he has now, obviously, maybe one of the greatest D-line coaches ever in college football, coaching him and developing him as well. I think, obviously, Justin, what you love about him, outside of the size, is just he's only been playing football for 2.5 years. Started playing as a sophomore in high school. So he's played basketball, still plays basketball. He's athletic. He can move. I think he has to get stronger, has to refine his skills as far as technique, hand placement, get stronger at the point of attack. But what I think you love the most, if you're an Ohio State fan or if you're Larry Johnson or Ryan Day, is the upside, the potential. You're taking a young football player with a great body, great frame, natural talent, and giving him to Larry Johnson to develop. And I think you have to be excited about that if you're a Buckeye fan.
Gosh. Summer is for recruiting. Make sure you're staying up with Chad Simmons to get all the intel, all the scoop in the wild world that is the college football recruiting. Chad, thank you so much. We'll do this again real soon. I'm sure, folks, you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to the On3 YouTube channel. We're going to keep this thing rolling. Thanks so much, Chad.
Anytime. Thanks, JD.
Thank you for watching. Make sure you smash that subscribe button for me. And remember to check out all the videos on the On3 YouTube page.